Sharing Christ like you do, you're a walking prophecy. Yeah. No one bold like you, roar like a lion. Wife who walks in power, you're a walking prophecy. Yeah.
Welcome. My name is Yudi Huntington, and you're listening to the podcast From Hurt to Healed. Thank you for tuning in.
February 13th, 2001. I'm 19, still working at Eagle Mountain Casino. One night after work, I go to a party, and by 3 or 4 a.m., I get home. I'm intoxicated. I had been smoking weed at the party, so I am not sober. I lay down to go to bed, and all of a sudden, I hear God's voice. So at this moment, I know I am intoxicated and I know I'm not in my right mind. So I am thinking somehow I got some drugs of some sort that's causing me to hear wild things. And then I heard God's voice again. I know in real time I am speaking this, and it's been maybe a few seconds that I've shared what I just experienced. But in God's timing, and like His word says, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So the timing in heaven is not similar to the timing here in this world. There's so much that happened in those seconds. In the very moment when I heard God's voice, so much took place. And so let me unpack that moment for you. The very first time I heard God's voice, I thought I was stoned out of my mind, so I didn't really think it was the Lord. I ended up just rolling over in my bed and putting my blanket over my head. And then the voice said again, "You asked for me to speak to you, and I am speaking, but you're not listening." And I was blown away, because the truth is that was the Lord. When He said that, simultaneously, I was seeing moments of my life in the past where God had been speaking to me, but I didn't know it. And these memories were coming in like pictures. And the way that I can explain it in logical form is I was seeing memories of my past coming from like the left and the right. And it was every memory that I can think of quickly. And while I'm watching this preview of my life, my mind is trying to catch up with this spiritual encounter. God, the one that I had been asking to hear His voice, is now speaking, and I don't know what's going on. My emotions are wild. I still think I'm experiencing something due to my intoxication or me being stoned, but that is slowly fading away, and I'm comprehending more in the moment of what's going on. And again, because our time is so different from heaven and earth, this all happened in just seconds. But what I experienced felt like it took place for a long time. And so in my mind, I'm trying to get a hold of this experience. And with all the memories that had just flooded in, it just happened so fast. It was almost like I knew in that moment my life changed forever. I knew that I was never going to be the same. I started crying. I got up out of my bed. And then He said to me, "Turn on the TV." Now, guys, I believe in that moment it was an instruction for my life. And if I didn't obey in that very moment, I would not have encountered this. And so immediately, I got my remote, I turned on my TV, and the only thing I could think of was to turn it to a Christian network. And so I did. TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. And so I watched it. And what was on the TV was Benny Hinn interviewing a man that I didn't know his name at the time, but I know now it was John Paul Jackson. They were having a conversation about dream interpretation. And I'm sitting on my bed, completely sober, no longer drunk or stoned. I'm sober. And so I am watching this. And I'm trying to make sense of what God is trying to show me. And so I'm listening to what they're talking about. John Paul Jackson is talking about interpreting dreams, and Benny Hinn is interviewing him. As I'm trying to decipher and unpack this whole thing for myself, in the middle of John Paul's discussion, Benny Hinn interrupts him and says, "Hold on, wait a minute. He tells him to stop talking. Benny Hinn looks at the television screen and says, "There's a young girl who has been asking God to hear his voice." And guys, at this moment, my heart's beating even faster. I am completely blown away. And I'm like, he's talking to me. And the next thing he said blew me even more away. What he said and what he did was amazing and completely for me. Benny Hinn said, "And when you heard his voice, I can see you. You were so shocked and so amazed that he's talking to you. And everything was going so fast." And guys, when he said everything was going so fast, he used his hands to gesture that things were coming from the left and the right. That's exactly how it was for me. That was straight from the Lord to me. I tell you what, February 13th, 2001 is a day that I will never forget. It marked me for life. So from there, I was changed. And I remember the day, it was on a Wednesday. And I called my job and I said, "I'm not going to be able to go into work today. I'm going to church." I remember getting in my car and having to run some errands that day. And I just wanted to tell everybody I saw about my encounter. I wanted to let everyone know what happened and that Jesus is real. It was an amazing experience. And so that day, I went to church. I started going to the church that my mom and sister were attending. I rededicated my life that day, and I just began going to church. At this time, I'm still working at the casino. So I tried to stay away from the parties and drinking. However, it was a personal encounter with the Lord on my own. And so no one knew what happened unless I spoke it. And what I mean by all of this is that no one knew what happened to me. Just one night after I partied hard, that very night, I come home and I'm completely changed. And the next day, all of a sudden, I don't want to drink or party, go out, hang out, do any of those things. And at the time, I didn't know how to articulate my experience. I didn't say anything to anybody except for my parents and my close family. So as days continued, I tried to stay away from the lifestyle that I previously exited out of. But then I started thinking, I can still go and just hang out with my friends. There's no harm in that. And then I thought, well, just one beer wouldn't hurt. And well, I tried really hard to just have one. I want to insert this here. For me, at the time, I couldn't just have one beer because one taste triggered me to drink more. So drinking was a temptation for me. The parties and the scene was a temptation for me to remain in the lifestyle that I was a part of. I didn't know how to have a healthy balance. I was unsure on how to continue. One day, I decided I wanted to continue my former lifestyle. And so I called a friend and I drank the night away. I want to insert this part and say, this is part of the transformation journey. That moment did not mean I went back. That moment was I was still progressing. And let me explain that. Because a lot of us who struggle with addictions, we think that if we relapse, that it's over and that we just have to go full out, do all the things again, and just do all the stuff. But the truth is, this is part of the transformation journey. And so for me, in that moment, I believed that I stepped 1,000 steps back and that I completely ruined it and that there was no turning back to a good lifestyle anymore. But that was a lie. That was part of the progression towards my recovery. I also want to insert this. There are many of you transitioning from addiction to sobriety or from bad habits to good ones. And listen, I get it. It is hard. It is not easy. But temptation is just that. It's very tempting. I want to take this moment and validate what you are going through. Some people might be telling you just to quit. Just stop doing it. If you really loved your children, you can just quit. And sure, maybe that's true for some people. And maybe you're hard on yourself too. Maybe you think you're a bad parent for not just quitting. But it's hard. You are not a bad parent. You are not an evil, selfish person. You are really trying. So good job. Good for you, because you are progressing. Stop and celebrate the small wins. A full day of sobriety is a win. A full week of not touching that substance or that thing that you have always been drawn to, good for you. So begin to celebrate those. Celebrate with chocolate if that's not one of your issues. If your addiction is sugar, then get you some sugarless chocolate and celebrate the hell out of that thing. And I mean it. I bet it feels like hell trying to get sober, trying to quit the bad habit. Listen, find a Celebrate Recovery group. Those are amazing. So now, I'm back in my old lifestyle again. And at that moment, my mindset was, well, I failed. I already went back. There's no coming out of this. And in my mind, my thoughts were just bringing me down and making me believe that I went back. But I didn't know that this was part of recovery. So one night, I was drinking. And so what I'll do here is I'll skip all the details and I'll just say that one night, I went into a hotel room a virgin and came out not one anymore. I was devastated. Even though I lived a wild lifestyle, I wanted to keep my virginity until marriage. That was a very big deal for me. I'm talking a very big deal. I was broken after this. Nevertheless, I continued to act like it didn't affect me. I didn't skip a beat. I would continue as if nothing happened. But I was dead inside. So here I am, 19 years old still at this point, fulfilling my plan of partying hard for a year after graduation. But then something happened. At the time, I couldn't explain what was happening. I just didn't go to work. I stopped talking to my friends. I wasn't partying. And because I lived with my parents, it was obvious that there was a change in me. From one day being the happy, friendly, fun extrovert that I was into this person who just began to sleep her days away And so at the time, my parents, they were asking me, what's wrong? I tried to answer them, but words were not formulating for me. I'll give you an example. One day I was in the kitchen and my mom was asking me, okay, what's going on? What's wrong? And I looked at her and then I looked away and my eyes just wandered up to the ceiling, and saying no words, I was trying to get a sentence out. And all that came out of my mouth was 2 words, I and just. So I was trying to say, I just feel like such and such, right? I was trying to formulate a sentence, but all I can say is, I just, and that's it. That's all I could say. My parents didn't know what to do. Thankfully, all they knew to do was to pray. Other instances that took place during this time in my life were things like, I'll give you another example. I'm driving in my car. I'm trying to lead my sister to the church where we were supposed to be going to, and I forgot how to get there. And so I started driving in circles, going down the block and just circling the block and then going down different roads trying to find where I was. I just didn't know where I was anymore. I mean, I knew that I was in Porterville, California. I knew I was in my hometown. I just didn't know how to get to the church. And in my mind, I thought, okay, let's just get to any church, just any church at all. And so I'm in my car and my sister's driving behind me, following me. And I ended up just going to a different church. And as I was pulling into the driveway, it just dawned on me. I knew exactly where I was and I knew how to get to the church that I originally wanted to go to. So I went out of that parking lot, came back, and my sister is following me, trying to figure out what's going on. And of course, I guess we didn't have cell phones or anything. I don't know, but she didn't call me or anything. I ended up getting to the actual church. But that's just an example of confusion and things that were happening on a daily basis. Another example is when my dad and I went to this place to purchase flights, and I'm standing next to him as the lady is talking to him, and my dad is asking me questions that she was asking me because I wasn't answering her. And so my dad reiterated the question. I look up at my dad and I'm answering him, and then I'm looking over to my left because this man is sitting in the corner and he's just staring at me. And then I look up at my dad. I want him to see my eyes so that he recognizes that I'm recognizing that man in the corner just staring at me, and he is freaking me out. And my dad's just communicating with the lady's communicating with him, and I'm trying to get their attention, but I'm not doing anything. I am just standing there scared. As I looked back again, he folds his hands and rests his chin above his folded hands and just stares at me. And as I'm looking at him, my thoughts are, he wants to intimidate me. He's trying to scare me, and it's working. So I look up at my dad and I said, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And my dad's like, what? And so we get in the vehicle and he looks at me. He says, what happened back there? I said, well, that man, he scared me. And he asked me, what man? I said, the man that was sitting in the corner, and I described him. And my dad looked at me and said, there was no man.
Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with someone you love. God bless.